A man has been fined after he set fire to a Qur'an outside the Turkish Consulate in London. This is an act that was deemed by the judge involved as, quote, motivated at least in part by hatred of Muslims. Hamit Coskun, who's 50 years old, found guilty of a religiously aggravated public order offence on Monday, yesterday. He himself has called his prosecution an assault on free speech. Coskun, born in Turkey, himself is half Kurdish, half Armenian, argued in court that he had protested peacefully and that burning the Qur'an was part of his freedom of expression. But the judge involved, Judge Magava, found that Koskun's actions were highly provocative, quote, and said he was motivated at least in part by hatred of Muslims. Koskun argued his criticism was of Islam in general rather than Muslims, but Magava, the judge, said he could not accept this. Just for a question on the legal side of things, so as I say, trying to bring a bit of clarity to this, legal clarity, let's talk to Liam Kotrie, who is a lawyer at Mary Monson Solicitors. Liam, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Were you surprised by this judgment?
I'm not sure I was surprised by the verdict. I think it could have gone either way, but I think you touched on a very important point here. That the judge has to look into the mind of someone to see exactly what they're thinking. In this particular case, decide whether or not this offence was racially aggravated. We've talked about Islam, we've talked about Muslims in general. Of course, there are, I think, around 2 billion Muslims in the world, and seems to be focusing on Turkey and the way he and his family were treated there. And I've always had a bit of a problem with these racially aggravated offences. I think sentencing-wise, any racial aggravation can have an effect on sentencing. But whether or not a particular offence can be racially aggravated, I think we are verging on thought crimes, I do feel. However, in this particular case... Just stop you there, Liam, just to explain it. So the point here is that the judge is saying, and the reason he's received this fine, really, is because it verges into the offence, in the judge's view, in his verdict, verges into being racially aggravated, i.e. it's not so much the act of burning the Qur'an, but it is the reason that he's doing it, the judge is saying, is racially aggravated or racially inspired. And there he has to look into the context of things. He's outside the Turkish consulate. And if we took a Muslim man who was outside a British public office of some kind, burning a Bible, saying F Christianity, the religion of terrorism, I think we'd struggle with that kind of free speech as well. So we need to look at these things both ways, and probably get the same kind of press this would as well. It's the context, and you've got children going into a building like that who may be Turkish citizens, getting their passports, things like that. And we've got to think about, when we're thinking about free speech, it's incredibly important. It's possibly the most important part of any democratic society. But when it affects the well-being of others to a detrimental effect, especially children and just normal people going out about their daily business, then we have to think very carefully whether or not that has limits. And that's why in this country we do have those limits on free speech.
Although, as you say, Liam, you do think that some of the racially aggravated laws offences, you think that they can verge into, use your words, thought crimes.
Yeah, well, I do worry about that. I
just explain what you mean by that. How can that manifest itself for people who aren't familiar with it? How can that manifest?
So often in a heated argument, someone will pick out something they don't like about someone, whether they're overweight or the colour of their hair or something like that, or it might be their race or religion. Now, if it is the colour of their hair or their weight, there's no separate crime for that. But they're only picking out something at the time to hurt that other person. Whether or not that person is actually racist and then labelled as a racist once they're convicted of that racially aggravated offence, it can change their whole life. And I'm not sure we should really be thinking about whether or not someone is racist or whether they've been affected by other things in society to say such a thing. They can still be guilty of a crime, but whether or not what they were thinking at the time of that offence should affect the offence for which they're convicted is possibly unfair.
So it basically requires a judge, as the judge has had to do in this case, to try and get inside the head of someone, which is obviously difficult to do. I mean, obviously you can sort of in a mosaic way try and piece together on the basis of things they've written or social media, whatever it happens to be. But nonetheless, in this case, it seems to me that the crux of it is this gentleman saying, well, no, I don't have a problem with Muslims, I have a problem with Islam, which you are allowed to do. There's no legal impediment to do that. You don't have to, you don't have to like or indeed approve of all religions. But the crux of it is basically whether or not the judge believes that to be the case, or whether actually he has got a racially motivated problem with adherents of Islam, i.e. Muslims.
And that's possibly the problem here. It may be a political demonstration that he's making rather than a racist one. But again, when you
Not least because Islam, being a Muslim, is not actually a race. I mean, it is to be an adherent of a religion.
No, but I think possibly we're getting into semantics.
But that's the I suppose that is the difficulty with these matters, right? Is that semantics? I mean, semantics are important in this because they are. This is basically an argument about words.
And you need certainty, but I also think if someone is anti-Semitic, then they are in fact racist. When you're talking about a set group of people that can be labelled in a way, then you need to be very careful about them being protected, especially if they are a minority in society.
Yes. Do you think we're going to see more of these sorts of cases, Liam? Do we see a lot of them? Is it very common, this sort of thing?
Well, I think they're getting more and more common over time. The racial rhetoric in politics is increasing, whether it's here or over in the States. And when immigrants are being blamed for the poverty in this country, rather than the billionaires who aren't paying taxes or paying anything to society at all, I think that's always going to be a problem. And people need someone to blame. And when Nigel Farage tells you it's immigrants, that's what people are going to follow. It's the easiest thing, because that's what they see on the streets. They don't see the billionaires. And those people are worshipped in society, and of course on Twitter and everywhere else.
Do you agree with those who are saying that this is turning into a blasphemy law?
I think when you're delving into people's thoughts on anything, it's very dangerous. I think that all minorities, however, should be protected if they are vulnerable in society. So we need to be very careful about those things. But I don't think so. I think when something is clear that it is racial and can involve religion, because I think it can involve both. When you have a specific group, then I don't believe it's a blasphemy law. No.
Liam Kotrie there, lawyer at Mary Monson Solicitors.